my big advice to all entrepreneurs is like, you don't want a board as you're trying to find out product market fit, because it's just a messy, gritty phase that, boards are really there to not help you find product market fit. Like they're they're there to kind of help you scale the business and hold you accountable. And so, we didn't get a board until after our Series A.
Hey everyone, welcome to the CEO Pajama Time podcast. Today I'm really excited to host Kate Ryder, the CEO of Maven. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. So to start us off, can you just tell us about Maven today? What do you do today? What problems do you solve in the world?
Sure. So Maven today, we are the largest virtual clinic in women's and family health. So we cover about 28 million lives all around the world, and we offer fertility, pregnancy, pediatric and menopause benefits. We, both are the reimburser on a lot of these benefits. And then we also have the largest telemedicine network. So I think a lot of the magic for our members going through these really vulnerable journeys is just connecting with all the wonderful providers that we have as part of our network. And we have over 30 different types. We have physicians, we have nurse practitioners, doulas, midwives, lactation consultants, genetic counselors, surrogacy coaches, you name it, when you go through these journeys. And so that is definitely the magic of Maven.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So now take us back, almost like the Wayback Machine or whatever. Back in the early days, what was the problem that you saw that was kind of keeping you up at night that said, I'm going to start a company?
Yeah, well, I think so back in the day, I was working in venture capital, very intentionally trying to start something because my dad was an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to start something, but didn't necessarily know it was going to be in healthcare. And it was just right around the time that my friends started having kids and I was thinking about having kids. And so it was just a constant. The text messages about, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, or wow, this is happening to me. And then some of the joy, but also some of the real challenges. And it was just striking to me that women in their 20s or before they got on this family building journey, it felt more like a level playing field. And then all of a sudden, boom, this moment hits. And, we all know that the healthcare system across healthcare leaves much to be desired, but pretty shocking that so many parts of the care model for women had so many gaps during this time. Basic gaps like mental health after you have a baby and getting that support if you have postpartum depression, or if you're struggling to have a baby, getting fertility coverage. And so, some of these real life stories played out. My first part of my journey was a miscarriage. It was a horrendous experience, really unsupported. And that kind of fortified a real desire to think, okay, the care model needs to change. And what better place to do that than actually just reinventing it virtually?
Mm-hmm. But then, that's like a big, tall order. So when you started, did you have a vision that it was kind of what it is now, or you had a different,
No,
I guess, what was your MVP?
Same.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Same.
Oh, yeah. So the first landing page of Maven was this it was like this futuristic clinic, and it was called the digital, because we were, in the beginning, we were only for women. And then we've, of course, since expanded for all reproductive health, women and families, men, women, children, going through these journeys. But in the beginning, it was just women only, reimagining this care model. And so the original landing page was this futuristic clinic. It was all white, and it was like it was like Gattaca-esque. And it was called the Maven, the digital clinic for women. And yeah, it was very similar. We've since, of course, added tons of capabilities reimbursement. We are the fertility benefit. We are the health plan carve out in that market now. That was something I did not imagine, starting. But certainly everything that we do today, covering the full reproductive life cycle, filling in all of the care gaps, and just challenging the care model from a protocol and coverage standpoint, was always what we were doing day one, which we still do. I still think you look at menopause, there's no protocol there. So,
right.
So, yeah.
But in the early days, you were direct to consumer, right? Is that how it all started? So tell me about that. What was the business model you envisioned? What happened? What made you change?
Yes, so we launched as a B2C company. Although luckily from my time in VC, I saw some of these businesses get a lot of enterprise level traction right as
Mm-hmm.
we were launching. So we didn't know whether B2C was going to, massively take off, but we also knew that B2B was a great way to also just be a distribution channel into the
Mm-hmm.
consumer. So we were actually doing both, and we had started to build pipeline even before we launched. And so, I remember my parents' neighbor was like a senior leader in GE benefits. So she was part of the round table very, very early on. And so when we launched, though, what was very clear is that the consumer telehealth revolution had not yet arrived.
Mm-hmm.
COVID hadn't hit yet. People didn't know what telemedicine was. It felt like this weird thing to video chat with a doctor. For a lot of people, like marketing, CAC was through the roof. It was really
Mm-hmm.
hard to find a sustainable marketing channel. And so as all of this was happening, and we did our best, we had armies of field marketers marching around New York, signing members up. Our B2B pipeline started to really take off, with this notion of maternity is one of our top areas of spend, and then we lose a lot of women in that journey, and they don't actually come back to work. And so we have a two-sided problem where women aren't getting promoted enough into leadership positions because there's a critical pipeline leakage at this point. And then
Mm-hmm.
also this is just such a huge spend area. And we know that part of this is women are not getting the support they deserve. So companies were already keyed into this when I started talking
Mm-hmm.
to them.
Yeah. So I'm just taken by the fact that to sign people up to a digital service, you were walking around physically in New York
Yeah.
with click clipboards or something.
Oh yeah, literally. Field marketers outside of subway stations, in parks. When your numbers are really small, you just need to show forward momentum. And so I think from those days, what it taught us was that, okay, this was not sustaneable. This was clearly
Mm-hmm.
not a sustainable channel. Although, even Uber started in bars, right? People signing
Yeah.
people up. Although then there was a virality effect there that was not happening on Maven. But what was happening was that all of those early consumer experiences were really profound for our members and our providers. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got, because I met some of these early users myself, um, I actually, so there's this one woman I remember, she was a college girl, and she signed up to Maven. She was, willing to try this new app. And then and then she was alone in New York City from California. I gave her my number and I was like, oh my gosh, if you ever need anything, for this long conversation. And then she texted me a few weeks later and said, thank you so much. I got my birth control on Maven. I was too afraid to go to the campus health. And P.S. Now all of my friends are using you too. And
Mm.
there was those little moments in those early days as we were trying to muscle through consumer. I was like, okay, maybe we don't have a sustainable business model yet on the consumer side, but man, the product market fit is so strong.
Mm-hmm. So people like it. Like this idea of a consumer oriented women's health made sense. It's just how do you get the consumers on board in a more sustainable way?
Well, we had cracked trust,
Yeah.
and that's one of the hardest things to crack in healthcare because we had such incredible providers and then there was such need on the other side.
Yeah. And when you think back to those days of, okay, we're cracking trust, but we also know the consumer channel is not I know it still exists, but it's not sustainable, scalable. This isn't the way we're going to grow. What were the signals that you were picking up other than that, yeah, physically it was difficult to get people on, but how did you sort of make that decision to say, okay, we're going to shift more of our focus to the B2B channel?
Well, it was just, the first year of launching anything, particularly when it's a new category and there was no category in maternity benefits. There was really
Mhm.
the category of telehealth, the category of particularly we were the first telemedicine provider focused on women ever to launch, right? And so when you're doing something that new, you can't, it's hard to you have to be super flexible. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. So now I think as competitors or copycats or whatever are launching in our space, or other spaces that are much more well trodden, it's pretty clear what's worked and what hasn't. But back in the day, it was very unclear. And so it was just, we were lucky that as we just found consumer hard. And, the first 6 to 12 months, you're like, maybe it's not the market, it's just me. And like,
Yeah.
we haven't built the operational discipline yet to really get this off the ground. So you try things and you experiment. But at a certain point, like even when I was, in a lot, like recruiting people myself, like trying to understand, because it's also a great moment to get user feedback too.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a new user behavior. So it was a new user behavior, and it was just harder to get people to convert in those days when they didn't totally need it at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it costs a lot of money to find those people who needed it in that moment. But then when we were talking to enterprise and we were going into benefits and talking to all these benefits leaders, like there was real interest and a real market around women's health that
Yeah.
had started, and it was in diabetes and it was in mental health. And so it made sense that one of the big specialty categories was women's health that was untapped and they had no solutions. And so that's really we just got some major signals there, and then all of a sudden we landed a Fortune 50 contract
Yeah.
like, within 2 years of launching. That was a multi-million-dollar contract, and so that really kind of changed the game.
Right. And you're like, oh, wait, this could work. And then, yeah. Okay. So then, question for you, obviously. So your father was an entrepreneur. You're like, I'm going to build a business. But did you ever feel like imposter syndrome building a business in healthcare? You're not a clinician. You're not really from the healthcare space, I think. So
No.
curious, like, did you have any sort of, did either you feel that or did you get pushback from anybody else of like, why are you starting this?
Oh, definitely got the pushback. I think entrepreneurs, my husband jokes that I have this weird confidence where you kind of like, you have the vision, and you see this is how the world should be. But no, I actually felt it's always been a real competitive advantage for us because we
Mm.
build from the lens of the patient. And, that's if everyone thinks that the healthcare industry should be a more consumer industry, well, then that voice is what should actually be building products. And I was a business journalist before I started Maven, so I always took it with like a very clear lens on business too. And so what was the right business model, what was going to work. But when we have values at Maven, like our North Star is our member, and then our client, and then the company itself, and then your team, and then self. So it's that kind of 5-prong set of values. But a lot of businesses will put the client first, but we put the member
Mm-hmm.
first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So I know in the early days you said you started in New York. Did you pick a market-based approach or were you launching in multiple places at once? How did you decide where to start?
Well, we were virtual always. So we were on the licensure side, we would staff with in-licensed providers. And
Mm-hmm.
at the time there was like and we were I think one of the first businesses to really work with nurse practitioners to prescribe, because they were getting prescribing capabilities. They're like on a state by state level. So some of our states, like New York, when we launched, it was like the first year nurse practitioners were allowed to prescribe. We used primarily NPs, but then in other states it was still MD. And so that was kind of the first 6 months before we even launched, was really getting our provider staffing up to speed. And as we launched with about 300 different providers, and we were in almost all states at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you scale and you shift to a more full-time model where you have, providers who work for you, they hold a lot of different state licenses. So you can ensure that you're, across all 50 states.
So essentially the service was available, but then getting people on board, you kind of had to focus your energy where there was a concentration of people. But then once you shifted to employer, that changed and you had the full
Well, I mean,
states.
because it was virtual, and by the way, some of our providers don't need state licensure, like doulas or
Mm-hmm.
lactation consultants, coaches, right? So effectively, yeah, no, we would be posting in mom groups that were national. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't
Okay.
field marketers were marching around New York City,
Mm-hmm.
but from a marketing standpoint, on those
You were just kind of
early.
going everywhere.
Oh yeah, we would do like giveaway marketing campaigns with other brands where you would do email swaps and then have a giveaway. And then that would give us a bunch of emails that then we would do life cycle marketing against, and that was national.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me, like, when you think back of your journey, were there any like big mistakes you made in the beginning or things you were like, oh, I should totally not have done that? Like, obviously, some of it is just discovery and figuring out what works, but anything that you feel like, ooh, that was probably not the best approach.
I mean, like a million things, but I would say like one thing we did that we then shut down was so we were we were in this moment where I think this was maybe 12 months after we launched. So this is way back in like early 2016. We were in this moment where we realized that the lifetime value of our early users was on the consumer side was was lower because a lot of our users would come in like once and get a prescription for low level antibiotics or birth control, or they would use a provider once or twice in the postpartum period, but again, because they were having to pay for all of it out of pocket. That we thought, okay, maybe we should be in a subscription model where we're building more and delivering more services, and then they can and then these members can book unlimited provider appointments. So similar to what we were building already for the B2B platform, we thought, well, we're building it already, should we launch something like this to B2C immediately? And so we targeted the college market because a lot of those users were our early users on consumer, and there was a lot of need, and they weren't going to campus health centers. We had all these college ambassadors, whether it was just out of embarrassment because they were really young and these were some of their first time women's health issues, or because the campus health centers didn't have a lot of access and they were understaffed. And then there was a lot of college campuses where they just didn't have any mental health at all. So we launched this campus health product. I think it was like Maven Campus was the name of it. And it was maybe, I don't even remember the price point. It was like maybe $300-400 a year. And we targeted the parents. So we were like, okay, parents are the ones sending their kids off to school. They probably are freaking out if they're like these young girls. Like I have a daughter, I would freak out. I'm going to freak out at that point in my life. And so don't you want to like give them that extra safety net? And so that was our thesis. And we interviewed some parents and they said, oh, of course we'll buy it, because it was their daughters that were the ambassadors. That was like, talk to my mom and she'll be your test. And so we launched. And then what we found was the parents didn't want to pay because the parents either didn't want to think about their daughters having sex, understandable, or the parents were like, well, I'm already paying this big tuition bill with healthcare included. And so I don't need this like supplementary product. And it was still like telemedicine was brand new. It was not, in pre-COVID. So, and then, but of the people who did buy it, because we did obviously sell some, of the people who did buy it, they were all heavy mental health utilizers. So we started losing money.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
we're like, oh, this is all wrong. So we shut it down.
Okay. So how did you shut it down? Like, do you transition people out to something else, or you just had to just kind of shut it down?
We just said like this service, and at that point, because we built the payment rails for the B2B product, because we're starting to launch our benefits for subscription products. So yeah, we just said like, that we're shutting it down. Here you have X amount of time to use the products. Here's your money back, or I think it was monthly at the time, so there wasn't really any money back to give. But there weren't like so many users; it was all fine.
Okay.
And I think for the heavy mental health utilizers, we were like, and here are lots of other resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me about the dynamics with your board throughout this time. Like you're kind of shifting direction. Like the vision you sold them originally was more direct to consumer. You're, telling them this is your new great product potentially. Then you shut it down. Like how did you manage all of that?
We didn't. This was seed stage, so we didn't have a board.
Okay.
And so my big advice to all entrepreneurs is like, you don't want a board as you're trying to kind of find out product market fit, because it's just a messy, gritty phase that. Boards are really there to not help you find product market fit. Like they're they're there to kind of help you scale the business and hold you accountable. And so, yeah, we didn't get a board until after our Series A. And that was everything was kind of clear at that point. Our Series A came in like 2017.
And then it was just about scaling what you had already figured out.
I mean, that we had, that was when we had gotten the verbal for that multi-million-dollar contract. We had pipeline behind it. We had, so it was all about, okay, we're raising our Series A because we've spent 2 years kind of figuring out consumer, figuring out B2B, what's working, and B2B is the thing that's working. But we never shut our consumer product down, actually. We've always kept it alive, and now that we're in a new era of consumer health, it's exciting. What is going on there. So, but yeah, at that
Okay.
point, B2B was pretty clear.
Okay. So did you expect it to take 2 years? Were you like frustrated that it took so long to find product market fit? Like, what were your expectations going into it?
I guess it was 18 months. So it was like we launched April 2015, and then I think we got commitments for the Series A by the end of 2015, and then closed it in 2016. Or sorry, end of 2016, closed it 2017. So yeah, it was about 18 months. Yeah, I think I was, of course you wish it would be faster, but it didn't. Like, looking back at that time, it felt fast, quite frankly.
Uh-huh.
And I think, again, like when a category is so new, it was just, we were just in heavy experimentation mode for 18
Yeah.
months. And so I just, I'm so grateful to our founding team who was on that journey. And
Yeah.
it was so, I mean, you had to be so gritty and believe so much in the mission. And so I think that was something people ask me sometimes, like, how do you hire a founding team? And I think my answer is always like, well, it depends on the business and what you're going through. But if you are first in a category and you're trying to, like, build a new care model virtually for, change consumer behavior, and you really want really mission-driven people who will walk through walls with you. And so, fun story, but when we became, the first unicorn in women's and family health in 2021, I had the founding team over, like all of them, for dinner, to celebrate, because it was kind of like, because of that first 18 months where we stayed alive, we stayed positive, we stayed focused on the mission, we stayed focused on business model and what was going to be sustainable and scalable. Testament to so much of that work to where we are today.
Yeah. How many people were on that founding team? Like, how many people were at the dinner?
It's like 12.
12. And what percent were still with Maven at that point? Were they all still with Maven, or
I
half?
think about half. Yeah.
Half. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, another question I have for you, which is, I was talking to somebody once who told me, you have to figure out, are you a 0 to 1, a 1 to 10, or 10 to 100? Like, what kind of person are you? But you've been through, I mean, all of it at this point, right? You've grown with Maven, still going. So I guess my question is, how do you adapt? Like, firstly, do you like all the phases equally? How does it feel? But also, is it hard to change when you're suddenly like, oh, I'm not in experimentation now, I have a board now, I'm more mature, and eventually, maybe even going public or whatever happens? Like, how do you sort of change your own leadership style and your own approach? I mean, the company is so much bigger than 12 people at this point.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm still so engaged and excited, is that it's just the learning curve is still so high,
Uh-huh.
both for myself as well as just, what's going on in the broader healthcare industry is fascinating. And there's, with so much change, there's always comes great opportunity.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I would say, one of the most important things in the whole journey is to just really know yourself and know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and be intellectually honest about that. And then surround yourself with an incredible team who can kind of, fills a lot of the gaps of what you're not good at, and strengthen a lot of what you are. And everything is team, right? So I think
Yeah.
I would maybe not be as engaged if I didn't love my team so much, but it's fun. It's fun building. Like, there's a lot of people who've been at Maven for a long time who, we're still building. And then when we get new, amazing people who we really needed because they've seen the next phase of scale that I haven't seen, and, other people haven't seen, like, that's also just like exciting, fresh energy and
Mm-hmm.
really great experience. So then, so I think I'm a huge people person. So I think the different phases of growth for myself are always, it's like me in the context of team. It's not just kind of me alone, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
and then, but yeah, right now the phase is, it's highly strategic. It's still very operational. We have a big product launch coming up this year, which is exciting. But there's still like, I don't know. This is not, I know some founders maybe after 10 years, like they work 4-hour days. Like I don't, that would be amazing. I'm like, I'm working as hard now as I worked 10 years ago. I mean, there's been times where it's like, been a little easier than others, but this is not an easy industry.
Hmm.
And the industry itself that you work in also kind of defines what you need to do as a founder, what your culture is like. And I mean, you look around at healthcare right now and it's like, oh my God, like, like we're talking right now, it's January 29th. There's big news this week on Medicare rates, which means all of a sudden, health plans, which already were under a lot of pressure last year, and they're some of our biggest partners, are under even more pressure, this year.
Hmm.
And you look at trend and, the last 3-4 years in healthcare, all of our employer clients are having to deal with healthcare costs that go up like 10% every year, which is
Hmm.
totally crazy. And then you look at AI and how that's transforming consumer behavior. You look at GLP-1s; it's like the most exciting medicine to come out in our lifetime. And how is that going to transform women's health? And so it's
Hmm.
fun to operate, but still like so much work, I think, for teams and founders, and to make sure that you're always still seeing around the corner and on top of everything.
Yeah. And if you're willing to share, when you think of your skills and what you need to complement, like what do you think are your superpowers versus where do you always feel the need to find other people to cover those parts?
I would say I'm like classic founder where I'm a lot of vision, I'm a lot of
Hmm.
strategy, I care a lot about culture and leadership. I like being in the market with our clients. And
Hmm.
so as a result, I would say systems thinking and tight operational processes, like don't ask me to do that. I
Yeah.
I can definitely, I know that what needs to happen. And if there's not, if we don't have the right system, for example, or we implemented some tool that's wrong, I'm very good at asking 5 other founders, hey, did you use this tool in your go to market? Like this tool just and so
Uh-huh.
benchmarking and getting information to then bring back to the team. But I'm definitely not the one to execute it.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so now let's dig into. I'm curious, so you've been building the company for 10 years. As I asked the question before about the journey, I had this thought of like, oh, it's kind of like being a parent. Like you have a baby and then you learn how to be a baby parent, and then you have a toddler and you learn how to be a toddler parent. And my oldest turned 19 yesterday, so now
Rats.
I'm learning how to be like an adult parent, I guess. I
Well,
don't even know. But you obviously started this without kids, then you had kids. Also, I know your husband is an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about how you can manage, or how you did manage and made that work between building a company and building a family at the same time.
yeah, well, I have a stock answer. So I can talk more, but my stock answer for this is like not gracefully. Well, but no, I mean, but yeah, listen, my point of view is that my kids, my family, it's the most important thing in my life. So if it ever made it that I couldn't be a good mom and a good wife and, a good sister and daughter and friend, then, game over for me.
Hmm.
That being so, I think so that's kind of my lens, right? So but then it's like, okay, well, but then I have to figure out how to do both because I absolutely love Maven. I look at Maven definitely, it's like a little child in and of itself that, I had 10 years ago. And so it's really then comes back to just a team approach and massive over communication and
Hmm.
scheduling and logistics, tons of scheduling and logistics. But I'm really lucky. Very intentionally, we're in New York because my parents are really close by. So,
Hmm.
my oldest is almost 10, and I have like I don't think I've gone on a business trip where it's been me or my husband or my parents are with my kids.
Mm.
So just
Yeah.
very fortunate to have that set up. And my brother's really close by, my sister's really close by. My best friends that I've had for decades, they kind of keep me sane. And so yeah, I feel very, very grateful that it's been a village.
Yeah, that's fair. I tell people sometimes it's like, I mean, there's basically work and family. Like, there's not much else. Like, there's no hobbies, there's no whatever. But if you strip all some of those other things out, you can definitely make it work.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm not cool anymore. Like, I maybe was cool at one point. Like, I spent 8 years in my 20s living in Europe and Asia as a journalist. So I got to do some really cool things, and I'm glad I got that out of my system, because yeah, it's all only work and family. That's it.
yeah. um, cool. That's helpful. Do you mind if I ask you, and if you don't want to answer this, it's fine, how you handled maternity leaves? I know, having been through maternity leave myself a bunch of times in different work contexts, that it can be very difficult. Well, anyway, love to hear how you thought about it, how you prioritized when you spent time at the company versus home, etc.
Sure. Well, so the first baby, my son, it was 2016. So I had a miscarriage in 2015 when I launched Maven. So I experienced that, which I think emboldened me and it made me even more mission driven after that experience. Then I got pregnant really quickly, and then so Theo came about a little over a year after we launched. So it was still a very small team. I also was, we did not have a lot of money at the time. And so I couldn't afford really amazing childcare. So I went to my investors and I said, listen, if you guys will give me like I can give myself from Maven a stipend to pay for a baby nurse, then I can keep working, as much as I can through this time, because again, we were a 12-person company. And they said yes, and so then my team would come over because I was breastfeeding. So my team
Mm-hmm.
would come over to my apartment in Fort Greene. And we would work around my dining room table. It allowed me to, so then I had a night nurse who was also helpful. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the most important things, that a great piece of advice I got was, it's so important to keep your sleep if you're going to be working and be a CEO. And this is, again, not for everyone, but it was a choice I wanted to make, and I'm so happy I made
Mm-hmm.
it. And so, again, my mom was around all the time. I had this wonderful night nurse for 3 months that allowed me to sleep during the nights, so that I could be clear-headed in the
Mm-hmm.
morning, and then my team would come over so I could still be
Yeah.
home with my baby and breastfeed. And infants sleep like 16 hours a day in the beginning, as
Yeah.
you have lots of kids. And so I didn't feel like I actually missed anything. If anything, I missed
Mm-hmm.
like things for myself, but like I didn't miss anything with my son.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not take that advice about
My
sleeping.
What's that?
Oh, go ahead. I said I did not take that advice about sleeping. I never did a night nurse and was always tired because I did nurse. But anyway, what can you do?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, and then my next two kids, we had more team members at the time, so I was
Mm-hmm.
able to balance a bit more. But yeah, that first kid, I mean, if you're gonna have a kid when you have 12 people at the company and you're not profitable and you have, you live and die every 18 months based on how much cash is in the bank, like,
Yeah, you can't take your foot off the gas. It's just not an option. Yeah, exactly. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit. When you think about sort of other founders, people give a lot of advice to founders like all the time. So I'm curious for you, like, what myth busting would you say? Like, what do people tell entrepreneurs that are like, oh my gosh, just don't listen to that? Or at least from your experience, was not helpful advice?
um, I mean, I think a lot of the time when you're in like the product market fit phase and you're just throwing things at the wall. I mean, I just remember in those early years, there was a lot of opinions on like, oh, maybe why do you have so many different providers in your network? Maybe it should only
Mm-hmm.
be one type of provider, or you should go, yeah, I think like some of the product stuff where it's like, well, um, maybe like, there's like, you should always listen to all of it. But no, I mean, I do think I'm a pretty good listener. I source a lot of ideas because that's kind of like coming from the background of a journalist. So you're like, you need lots of sources, and then you kind of sort
Mm-hmm.
through the advice. And then you quickly realize like, oh, that person always gives me the right advice. But no, I would say that the best advice actually I got in the early days was advice around focus, like
Mm-hmm.
do less, but do it well. But then you have to apply it in the right way. So like do less on the provider network side because that was the product. And so, that would have been the wrong call, but like do less on the like go to market execution side. Um, and then I think the other thing that is just so important in healthcare is just knowing how the money's made, because it's
Mm,
so opaque sometimes.
yeah.
You at the end of the day, like you have to build a sustainable business. And so what's been fun actually is in women's and family health, like it's a beautiful space to work in because you can always do right by the patient and keep the member as your North Star. But then if you really know the business of healthcare, you can also make it a win for,
Yeah.
the stakeholders that are paying for everything. And so it's a win-win for both member and client, and that's pretty cool. Whereas you can make the episode of care cost less without denigrating the quality of care,
Mm-hmm.
because you're zeroed in on high risk pregnancies in an engaging way, or in the fertility space, you figure out a different business model than just marking up drugs and cycles, which, isn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the way things should be. And so if you can figure out how with technology to create a business model that's kind of on the right side of history, where it's transparent and it's member first, but then it also really helps your key clients and stakeholders. Like that's the puzzle that has been really fun to solve,
Mm-hmm.
and it's important in the early days to think about that.
Yeah, it's almost like a strategic puzzle that you don't necessarily have in some of the other industries where you just kind of take a playbook and run with it.
Yeah, or even in some industries in healthcare, like the only way to bring costs down is like there's a quality of care issue there, and that
Yeah.
doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be in women's and family health because there's just so many inherent gaps in the model in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So this podcast is called the CEO Pajama Time because, CEOs spend their days running their businesses. It's nights and weekends that they get to think about strategic problems and bigger picture. So what fuels your pajama time? Like, what are you reading, listening to? Like, do you have a notebook you write ideas in? Like, how do you sort of collect the big picture things that you have to address? And then how do you actually think about them?
Yeah. So I still read fiction. And then, if there's the occasional like great business book everyone's reading, I'll read that too. I read long form magazines. Again, my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I both started as journalists, so we do have paper subscriptions to The Economist, The New Yorker, the FT.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get the FT, like actual physical paper every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I do have still like if I have time, there's some days or weeks where I'm completely under a rock and I don't look at the news, or I only look at very brief headlines. But other times I have a little bit more bandwidth. Like I read like the Washington Post, the FT, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Economist, like every morning, and just I read pretty quickly. And so, that's something that I'm not really like a social media person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like being on social media, but I'm still like I'll be reading news on my phone all the time. Um, and then I don't know. And that was your question, like what do you consume?
Yeah, so then so that's part of it. But so then you're consuming those. Those are like running in the background, helping you think about things. Do you sort of collect like I got to solve this puzzle and then like sit down at some point and do it, or you just kind of do it as baked into your work? Like how do you manage like thinking about the bigger strategic next horizon things?
I write. So
Mhm.
I planes are awesome, where you can sit down and write yourself a memo. I write, I'm pretty hands-on. You have an awesome chief communications brand officer, Sheila, who's a great partner. But she could tell you I'm really hands-on in a lot of the
Uh-huh.
comms and writing because I care. So yeah, I write. Writing brings me clarity, and I get my moments
Mhm.
to do it either when I travel, or, the occasional weekend morning.
Yeah.
The kids are watching something on TV and.
Yeah. And how do you solicit input from people when let's say you have an idea, you want to like vet it with the market or do you talk to advisors? Do you go to customers? Like
Yeah,
how do
all the
you
time. I'm just asking
Okay.
questions all the time. I feel like everything's like a story to report. So,
Yeah.
So yes, I have phenomenal board members who I definitely call, particularly my two independents who are operators.
Mm-hmm.
They're also running businesses right now, Rachel Lineker and Jenny Schneider. And had my former board independent Chris Klomp, who,
Mm-hmm.
he's in the government now doing
Yeah.
the things, but is a great thought partner. And then friends who are entrepreneurs, I'll
Mm-hmm.
ask them for their perspective on things. Every time we have a product idea or something we want to launch and I'm with a client or a sales prospect even, I'll ask them, hey, what do you think about this? We're thinking about this. And you kind of know who to ask. Like some of your
Yeah.
clients like really want to be engaged on that, and then others not as much. So, but definitely I'm always asking, feedback, like health plan partners. So yeah, I think just anyone who will answer my
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Yeah. So then last question for you. What's like a big bet you're making now that might surprise us all later?
I think we're gonna surprise people, but I can't talk about it because we're about to
Okay.
announce it. But we've
Ooh,
been
I'm
working on
excited.
something. We've been working on something for the last year. Started building it more recently, but have been working in the background on the. So yeah, you'll see.
Okay. And when should we expect to hear about that?
Before the summer.
Okay, cool. We'll keep our ears open. Anything else you want to share with the listeners? Anything that was kind of really helpful for you in your journey up to this point that they should keep in mind?
No, just the best piece of advice someone ever gave me about being an entrepreneur in healthcare is just survive the first 5 years.
Mm.
If you can
Oh,
just
5 years. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. I mean, you asked it like it took us longer
Yeah.
than the average company to get product market fit, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
hit our Series A. And so just like the sales cycles are long, there's delays, this is, a slower moving industry, but there's so much need. And so,
Mm-hmm.
be persistent, be patient and know that if you do make it to the 5 years, you've probably done something pretty impactful, because I couldn't imagine working in a different industry, just because of the amount of amazing impacts and need in this space. And as somebody who is an outsider to healthcare, I feel like it's so important for fresh thinking, because this has been a
Yeah.
system that has not worked.
Okay, so just survive the first 5 years. Okay.
Survive 5 years. Put that pin in the calendar.
Yeah. That sounds good. Thank you so much for joining us, Kate. We really
Yeah, thank you.
appreciate it.
And awesome podcast. So congrats on launching it.
Thank you.